How does a lone individual with critical inside information get the proper authorities even to listen to what he is trying to say? Today on our podcast, we are going to enter into territory that we have never covered before on this topic. It's a little bit dramatic, it's a little bit humorous, and it's a little bit frustrating, and we're calling it 2 New Vitamins Walk into the FDA. Hello and welcome to the BC Messenger podcast. Real science, real Bible, real history, and real world. This is November 2025, episode number 40. And my name is Steve Hall. As always, I'm here with my wife, Jennifer.
We're glad to have you with us for our 40th episode. And we thought, as a good way to begin episode 40, we would share several pieces of listener feedback that have come to us over the past few months. As you can imagine, when you're hosting a podcast and you're sitting in front of the microphone, speaking out into what can feel sort of like a void, it's really wonderful when you hear from your people, you hear from your listeners, and they give you some kind of thought or a word or, a thank you or whatever they want to say after they've listened to some of your episodes. And that's what we have.
It's also good to know that people are benefiting from this, and we hope you benefit from this podcast as well. We put this content out once a month. We believe that it is very important, and we're thankful that you're listening in. One individual said, "Such an informative podcast. I never knew a biblical chronologist was a thing, but it is very neat that there are people doing the work."
Another piece of feedback we selected says, "I enjoy all of the podcasts and have learned so much from them." Love that. Love that general statement. And I hope that's true for many, many of our listeners all over the world.
Yes, this individual said, while hauling corn today, this must be a farmer.
Yeah, it's harvest season.
Yep. Hauling corn, I listened to the September and October podcast. Wow, I feel so blessed. Thanks for using your gifts to point people to Jesus. Ootsie blows me away. Possibly the same time as Noah? Question marks there.
Question marks and exclamation points.
Yep. And then the next comment had to do with the same episode, Ootsie the Iceman, and the interview that Helen had with Jennifer. This person said, "I really enjoyed listening to the personal details of Jennifer's life and how she gives God glory for what he has done for her. Also, my 10-year-old enjoyed listening to the details of the frozen man," of course that's talking about Ootsie, "and how he fit into biblical history. Thanks."
Another general review comment: "This is a great show for anyone wanting a step up from traditional Christian apologetics. Dealing with real data and chronology is key. Highly recommend this show." Thank you for that.
Yes.
And then we saved for last a humorous comment. Got to get a little fun in here. We had an episode, Unfazed, 6 unique ideas to equip students heading to university. That was our August podcast. And here was a comment from a listener. "I listened to your most interesting podcast today. I have to say, when I was a freshman in college, I was not thinking that deep. I was just hoping there would be lots of cute boys." I love it.
That's funny. Well, that was encouraging for us, and we hope it encourages you as well. And we do, again, thank you for listening in. Jennifer, give us a little rundown of what we're going to be talking about today.
Okay, our featured topic, 2 new vitamins walked into the FDA. And what happened? We're going to share that with you. The first time we've ever talked about our interactions with the U.S. Food and Drug Administration and these 2 newly discovered vitamins. And we have quite a history to share with you on that today. And then our Helen's View today. This is a very interesting Helen's View, which is done by Dr. Aardsma's wife, Helen. You'll hear her come on the podcast after the featured topic. And she shares every month behind the scenes. And I think what she has this month is something very interesting. A lot of different points about the research here are demonstrated through what she wants to share today, which is reaching back into some decades ago, some history and some things that were documented that haven't been shared before. So I think it'll be very interesting to our listeners as we continue to present to you all the different aspects of the Bible science research that happens here at the Biblical Chronologist.
Quite a few years ago now, Dr. Gerald Aardsma set out on a quest to understand what causes human aging. Of course, Dr. Aardsma is not the only one to be doing this. Many people have set out on this quest, and it is a big topic of our day today. Dr. Aardsma is unique in that he went to the only window we have in the world that we know of where people actually lived many, many years longer than we do today. And of course, that is the book of Genesis, where we see people in history living to be hundreds and hundreds of years old. Dr. Aardsma asked the question, what was it in the world, in the environment, that was causing these people to live so many years and we do not anymore? Of course, we have many podcasts that go into this topic, and we don't have time to get into all of that today, but Dr. Aardsma discovered 2 vitamins that are missing in our diet today through the much research that he did over the years. He discovered 2 vitamins that were in the water that people drank before the flood. So, in essence, tying into what we talked about in our last podcast, we are talking about a vitamin deficiency disease when it comes to aging. Again, these topics are huge. There's a lot of research. There's a lot of information you can go back and read and look up yourself if you would like to understand more of what we're talking about on that topic. But after his initial discovery of the anti-aging vitamins, Dr. Aardsma made contact with the United States FDA, attempting to follow the applicable guidelines before bringing his new product to market. And this was back in 2017.
Back at that time, it was just vitamin MEPA. Just the first vitamin had been discovered. And so he was making an effort to very quickly go through the applicable guidelines so that he could introduce it into commerce. So that was in 2017. And the interactions between Dr. Aardsma and the FDA at that time, which we are going to share with you, the back and forth between Dr. Aardsma and this government agency, those interactions pretty much ended up being frustrating, unproductive. No surprise, I guess. 2 new vitamins walking into the FDA appeared to be somewhat of uncharted territory for this agency.
Well, and that makes sense. This is uncharted territory. We are involved in something here that is uncharted. And so we can expect to have these sorts of issues. And we wanted to make a podcast talking specifically about this to put the information out.
Our purpose today is that our audience can be educated and informed on this, so that as this continues to move forward, I mean, there's no conclusion to the matter at this point. There's some dramatic things that have happened recently, no conclusion yet, and we want you all to be informed. Hopefully you can connect the dots to the episode we had last month where we talked about the history of 5 of the different traditional vitamins and how they were discovered and all the trouble that was encountered along the way trying to bring those out for the good of the entire population. And so connect the dots, see where we are in our story. And then, as this continues to move forward, maybe there's going to be a role that you're going to be able to play if you are a supporter of these 2 newly discovered vitamins. And if you are indeed benefiting from them, as many of our listeners are, as we ourselves are, and I talk to people on the phone every single day who are.
Right. And we do find ourselves in a similar place as those people that we talked about in the last episode with the discovery of those vitamins and the deficiency diseases and all of that. And today, specifically, we want to demonstrate how hard it is to get in touch with and get an ear with those in leadership, those who have the ability to propagate this, to make it known, to put it into commerce. The FDA, of course, here in America, that is the avenue that you have to travel through Of course, it's for the protection of the people. We know all about that.
2 new vitamins do not walk into the FDA every day. We're blazing a trail of sorts with this discovery of these 2 new vitamins that are rooted in Bible science research. Unfortunately, there is no manual to go consult. Look up, in the index, how to present a vitamin discovery to the medical and governmental communities.
Even as good as artificial intelligence is these days, Chat GPT,
Right.
whatever, how to. It's not going to give you information and show you the way to go.
Right. And
it's blazing a trail.
a web search isn't going to give you a whole lot of
Right.
information because it's brand new. So how to move it into the hands of the proper authorities. But as we said, we are encouraged by last month's episode. There are inherent difficulties that are going to be faced by a discovery of this nature.
Right.
So we can see we're at least in good company. That's encouraging. And eventually the truth will prevail.
Well, and Dr. Aardsma's made the statement, and it is encouraging and true. We humans do tend to muddle our way through sooner or later. And that's true.
I don't know if it's encouraging or not, though, because that's kind of a
Well, the muddle part.
the reality of it. We pretty
Right.
much just muddle our way through.
But we get there sooner or later.
Sooner or later.
Yeah. And now it would be good probably to just quickly demonstrate, okay? Last podcast, we talked about vitamins. We talked about how hard it is to bring a new idea onto the scene and overcome preconceived ideas. We showed last month that, even the idea of a vitamin deficiency, in something, was completely new, and how hard that was to bring that to the public.
I got to tell you this. I don't think I told you this. Something that Dr. Aardsma said to me when I was over at the lab recently. He said, in context of that last episode, when those guys were so confused, is this a infectious disease or is this a deficiency? He said to me very, very early on, when he was starting researching the longevity in Genesis, he said he was asking himself the question, are we looking for a toxin or are we looking for a vitamin?
Huh.
So, what is the nature of this aging disease? Are we being poisoned by something from the outside of our bodies, or are our bodies lacking something that they need? And he
Something's
said,
missing.
He'd have to go back into all of his records and everything to see the very careful train of thought that he went down that brought him to the quest for a missing vitamin.
Very interesting. Well, yeah, and we are in the same category. We are in the same category as this, that we are saying we have a vitamin, and it's a vitamin that's missing in the human diet, and that's a hurdle because, again, today everybody thinks, well, we probably already have all the vitamins, right? We've discovered all the vitamins. We know what we're missing and what we're not. Well, we may not have discovered all the vitamins, and actually we haven't. And so that's very hard to wrap your brain around. But what I wanted to point out was, in some ways, we are similar and same as other vitamin discoveries, but in other ways, we're different. And it makes the task that we have here with this particular discovery even harder as we approach the FDA or as we try to put the word out. We're similar in the fact that what we have is a vitamin. Dr. Aardsma shared this with the FDA on numerous occasions in the back and forth. What is a vitamin? A vitamin is an organic substance. MEPA and MEPIA is an organic substance. Vitamins are a minor component of foods. MEPA, MEPIA was naturally present in micrograms per liter in drinking water. That's a minor component of food, of water. A vitamin is essential for normal physiological functions. These vitamins are essential for maintenance of normal functions. A vitamin is normally not produced in the body in amounts adequate to meet normal physiological needs. These vitamins are not produced in the body at all. And vitamins, the absence of them, cause a deficiency syndrome in the body. And these vitamins, the absence of them, same thing, causes a deficiency in the body. Now that takes us into what makes it different. Because in all other vitamin discoveries, everybody knew something was wrong. There's a disease. For instance, you have this horrible disease. Sailors are getting on ships and they're dying, and we don't know why they're dying, but there's obviously a disease here. We eventually found out we're going to call it scurvy. It's the deficiency of vitamin C.
How do you know it's a disease? Because you compare them to the rest of the population, which is not afflicted in this way. And so you can say, okay, clearly something is different with these people than it is with all these others.
But what do you do when you're in a situation and you don't even know you're suffering with a disease? Okay, this is what we're trying to communicate. What we call aging today is a deficiency syndrome in the body, to be viewed as a disease. This makes the task here even harder.
Yes, and why do we not know that it's a disease? Well, because it is afflicting the entire population. And so you are not able to study the normal group versus the sick group if everybody is suffering with it.
Right.
Now, someone might say, no way. There's no way that the entire globe is afflicted by a deficiency disease. That's crazy. Well, it may sound crazy. That does not mean, however, that it's not true. In fact, last month we demonstrated some of those exact types of reactions.
Right.
Now, this is new. This is a new category of vitamins where they're missing globally today. They weren't back in ancient history, but they are today. You will not find anything on the traditional vitamin list that fits that category at this time.
Right.
But my personal belief is that this is just opening the door. The discovery of the anti-aging vitamins may very well lead to more discoveries of the way things were in the ancient world that we do not have today,
Right.
that are completely missing today. And that's what we're saying about these two anti-aging vitamins.
And it's important to have that open mind, to realize we're moving forward, we're exploring. There's so much more out there to discover. It's wrong to say we have it all figured out. And that's part of the battle we're having here with the FDA. And it's just an example of the hardship of getting something like this that's such a trailblazing discovery across and getting it out. Another one that makes it different is the fact that, vitamins are in food. They're in fruit, they're in vegetables, they're in the sunshine. Well, where's your vitamin? Well, it's not there anymore. It used to be in the water, but because of an event that took place in the earth, it's no longer in the water, so it's not in a present food. Well, that's hard to grasp.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds a little bit fantastical.
Sure.
But one of my favorite quotes from Harriet Chick from last month's episode was about the vitamin D discovery, and specifically that it was coming from light, of all things, light.
Put this lamp over here on
and then also like in some fatty, certain types of foods or something, you could get it either way.
Right.
She said that seemed nothing short of fantastical when that idea started to be put forward.
You can imagine. And yet it's true. And now today it's common knowledge.
So saying that there used to be vitamins in the drinking water around the time of Noah's flood and before, and they're not in there today, that may seem fantastical, but guess what? We're in good company.
That's right. And the last thing I wanted to mention was, where do you get your information, Dr. Aardsma? Where are you finding this? Where is this window that you're seeing? Genesis in the Bible. Oh, Genesis. Okay. That's a hardship. Okay. Think about it. Dealing with the FDA, dealing with science today. And now we're going to bring up Genesis. So we wanted to bring this up as we talk about the FDA and the struggle, just to give, we deal with this all the time. We're dealing with this every day, but some of you're hearing some of this for the first time, and maybe you're just wrapping your mind around this. Yeah, this is difficult, isn't it? This is something it's truly trailblazing, and we're so appreciative that you're there and that you're listening and taking this in and on the ride with us, so to speak, and helping us get the information out.
Yes, and when I talk to different people on the phone and they want to express their appreciation in their own way, I remember those things and I file them away mentally for the days when we get discouraged. Just yesterday, I talked to someone fairly new and she said, I like the vitamins, so thank you. And The other week, I talked to a gentleman who came in through the creationist Bible science circles, and he heard Dr. Aardsma's name, and he said, I can feel a difference since I've been taking these vitamins, and thank you. And one time years ago, I remember one dear lady, she said, when he discovered this, he really done a good thing. Thank you. And, I just love that. And
Yep.
so I'm so thankful for those who are receptive.
That's right.
But of course, today we're dealing with things on a grand scale and a governmental oversight type of a thing, which is what eventually does happen when it comes to deficiency diseases that are afflicting the population. The government rightfully needs to play a role, and they need to play their role properly because people's lives and health depend upon it.
Right. Well, having set the stage there and having given that background a little bit and understanding, again, of where we're at, what we're doing, let's now talk about this journey that we've had so far with the Food and Drug Administration of the United States government, the FDA. Dr. Aardsma has had quite a bit of interaction back and forth with the FDA since 2017. He has kept a record of all of that information as it has gone back and forth to document this journey. We just want to quickly today travel through it and give you the information.
We're going to try
what happened.
Pull out the parts that are more interesting and skip all the legal terminology and everything. If you are interested in reading it in detail, contact us and we'll be glad to let you do that. Give you the, information there. But most of this is the FDA, but there are other government agencies and legislators and things that come into play throughout the record that we're going to give you here today.
And it's FDA because, anything that's being introduced into commerce that is edible, that we're eating, that we're putting into our body, that's sold publicly, must go through the Food and Drug Administration. And we're thankful for that, right? We don't want poisonous materials to be out there, people just buying it up and consuming it. We're thankful for the checks that we have here in America.
Now, a knowledgeable listener might say, and I've had people say this to me, oh, but supplements aren't subject to FDA approval.
Right.
And that's 100% correct. If you were thinking that, good job, because you are correct. Supplements do not have to be approved by the FDA because they are not a drug. However, you may not know that the FDA does have the authority to block a supplement from being introduced into commerce if they feel that there is a safety concern with the supplement. And so what are you supposed to do if you have a new supplement that you want to introduce into the wellness market today? Well, here's what you're supposed to do. Section 190.6, basically, right at the beginning, it says, a new dietary ingredient that has not been present in the food supply as an article used for food in a form in which the food has not been chemically altered, then here's what you're supposed to do. So that's what we have, something new that's going to be going into the food supply. And it's called a new dietary ingredient notification. And you have to send that in to the FDA. And you have to do it at least 75 days before you begin to introduce your product into the interstate commerce. You're selling it basically.
Okay, so it was Friday, July the 7th, 2017, that Dr. Aardsma mailed his NDI, new dietary ingredient notification, to the FDA for the first time by express mail.
Yes, and I should point out, he did not discover the vitamins on July 6th and then send his NDI out on July 7th.
Right.
I mean, he had been working with this particular compound, this vitamin compound, in the lab for 2 years or more. He had been testing it on lab animals and then on himself and his wife, all with very good results. And then, as I recall from memory, he had just published the Aging, Cause, and Cure book on his website very, very quickly, where he laid out all the theory and everything that had led up to the discovery and all of that. And then I think the NDI was very quickly on the heels of that.
And so he mails it Friday, July the 7th, 2017. And just like the government always is, it went right through, no problems.
It was received with applause and thanksgiving.
And 75 days later, he got actually a little early. No, actually, that's not what happened. Thursday, July the 13th.
Here you go.
Only a week? Less than a week later.
6 days later, here's what we have. The entire mail package was returned, marked forwarding order expired. And as it turns out, imagine this. The FDA had moved and had not maintained a forwarding address, and the address published online to send your NDI into was, in fact, out of date, and the package was returned.
All right. It costs about $45 to send that thing. So it's got to be sent again. Well, it sounds like government, doesn't it? It's just what it is.
We all understand what it's like to deal with government agencies, but they're not known for their efficiency or their expeditiousness.
But we're thankful for them. Carrying on.
All right. Then he remailed it and did make an effort to get a refund for the first mailing, but that was unsuccessful. So then what happened? August 2nd.
August 2nd, the FDA then did email Dr. Aardsma telling him that this was the official filing date, August the 2nd. Now, let me make a comment. Dr. Aardsma fully believes what he has here is life-saving vitamins. And so he's on a mission to get this out as quickly as possible, to get this to people. There's a moral obligation. You know, if you believe you have something that's going to save people's lives right now, and you want to get it to them as quick as you can, if you really believe that, right, your belief's going to determine your actions. And so that's what's going on. Dr. Aardsma is trying as fast as he can to get this to people's hands.
And obviously it is morally wrong.
Right.
If you're the captain of a ship and all the men have been dying from scurvy, and you know that most likely lime juice is going to solve the problem, or lemon juice, and you take no action on that and you don't even mention it and you just sit on that information, then yes, you are definitely morally responsible for the outcome of that.
Even if you're not completely right on everything, you have a moral obligation, and understand that completely. So his expectation was and hope was that, as the government says, 75-day deadline, then you'll be getting your answer. Well, he's emailed on August the 2nd and told that this is actually the filing date.
Right. Attention, Gerald E. Aardsma, your notification, NDIN, number, blah, 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 dated August 2nd, was received and filed on August 2nd. And you will get a response within 75 days, basically.
So putting a delay. You may not be keeping track of all these dates in your mind.
Yeah, don't forget, he mailed it the second time, July 13th, and it was express mail. So here you go, with just unnecessary delay. So he took issue with that, and Fred Hines was the consumer safety officer who had emailed him to let him know the filing date. So Dr. Aardsma, first of all, points out that that is an incorrect filing date, and they need to adjust that to reflect the date that it was mailed and, in fact, the date that it was received by the FDA. Fred Hines replied, "Unfortunately, Gerald, in this day and time, any package received at our facility has to go to a central facility that determines whether the package may or may not contain terrorist material, and then it is mailed back to us. So basically, sorry, but it had to go through some checks, and now we have it, but we will correct the date," and they did move the official filing date back a few days to July 28th. And so that meant that by October the 11th, he should be hearing on the 75-day deadline from the FDA to not block his supplement from being introduced into commerce.
Right. Let's move on. So then what happens? That was August the 3rd. Well, September the 26th, 2017.
Now, I will say they were a little early here. They did not go the max 75 days because that was October 11th. But he actually heard on September the 26th. So
he got a response
letter. Let's give
letter.
credit where credit is due.
Right. And it's FDA's response letter to the NDI notification.
Do not overlook this point. In this letter, attention, Gerald E. Aardsma, attached is a courtesy copy of the FDA's response letter to your NDI notification for methylphenolic acid.
I'm not sure what that is. But
Methylphenolic acid.
That's not what Dr. Aardsma discovered.
We have over here methylphosphonic acid. And so it's a little unfortunate that the consumer safety officer could not name the compound properly in his letter. But again, we'll give him the benefit of the doubt. And there is a copy of the letter that can be viewed. It's full of a lot of terminology, but basically they don't comment on the safety of the MEPA dietary supplement, and they reject the claim that MEPA is a vitamin. So Dr. Aardsma emails back 2 days later after he tries to digest all the legal mumbo jumbo that's in that FDA letter.
And he goes through a little bit with this gentleman named Fred about what the letter was trying to say. And basically, Dr. Aardsma's question then is, what action should I now take? What's the next step for me? You've sent me your letter, but in an effort to get the FDA most quickly to come to an understanding that these vitamins most certainly are vitamins, what do I need to do? Can we keep this dialogue open? Should the present letter you sent me be appealed? If that's even possible, do I need to start again from scratch? New application? Is there a quicker way? We're trying to get this into people's hands as fast as we can. What do I do?
Right. Now, just be aware that the response from the FDA rejected the claim that MEPA was a vitamin with no reasons given.
Right.
And really, this is just having to digest, again, all the legal terminology in that letter. And they declined to comment one way or the other on whether it was safe or not safe. So they pretty much just leave Dr. Aardsma hanging. And he says to them, okay, you're saying it's not a vitamin, then the only other thing it can be is a drug.
Right.
And he strongly, as the scientist involved here, strongly disagrees that this would be in the drug category.
And then he goes into explanation to Mr. Hines about what a vitamin is. We went through that a minute ago here as we were talking about the similarities that make this MEPA a vitamin. And he goes through that in his letter back to Mr. Hines. Well, then what? Thursday, October the 12th, 2 weeks later, Dr. Aardsma sends an email.
Let me just say that the previous email where Dr. Aardsma was saying, what should I do now then? He ends his email with a question. What does FDA feel is missing? And he's asking specifically that what I have here is not able to go in the vitamin category.
That make this a vitamin.
So he's asking them a question, so the ball is clearly back in their court.
Right.
But 2 weeks later, as you said, October the 12th, no response.
No response. He emails Mr. Hines, when can I expect a response? Well, about 5 days later, October the 17th, he does get an email, and Mr. Hines is trying to give some kind of an answer as to why they are saying this is not a vitamin. And basically, it looked like Mr. Hines delved into some sort of an article he found or a research that he did that showed methylphosphonic acid was a nerve agent.
It was a degradation product
right.
of some kind of chemical warfare, which sounds very, very scary. And so, listeners, please do not panic because it's okay. There are other byproducts as well of these things, which would include things like water and oxygen, being byproducts. And so just because something is a byproduct or a degradation product of something bad doesn't mean that degradation product itself is bad.
Right.
And so this was apparently the best explanation that Fred Hines could come up with. Fred Hines, in this October 17th communication, addresses it to Mr. Aardsma, which I have to say may have just been an oversight, but he is communicating with a PhD scientist here. And also, he definitely asserts the fact. He says in his second paragraph of his very short email, methylphosphonic acid does not fit under Section 201, which is the vitamin section of the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, i.e., it is not food and is certainly not a vitamin.
Right.
So he makes that blanket statement, and then he backs it up by saying it's a degradation product. So Dr. Aardsma gets back with him the very next day.
Right. Dr. Aardsma goes into a lengthy explanation to Mr. Hines.
And I should add here that here is Dr. Aardsma's answer to the scary sounding, degradation product. Dr. Aardsma says, being a decomposition product of a bad thing does not make a compound bad. Hydrogen peroxide is bad, H2O2, but even though H2O2, hydrogen peroxide, is bad and its permissible exposure limit is very low, very small, the decomposition products of H2O2 are water and oxygen.
Right.
And so we know that water and oxygen, not only are they not bad, but they're essential for life. And so he uses that explanation to negate the one concern that Fred Hines had raised about MEPA.
So he's explaining all this to Fred Hines in this next communication here and going on quite a good bit of length here, giving him the reasons for this, explaining it once more, this organic compound, all of the requirements for the FDA 201FF1A sections, all these things government has, and the reasons why he submitted this. And then he says, look, I know this is a tough NDI for the FDA to handle. The golden years of vitamin discovery ended in the mid-20th century, making the presentation of a new vitamin to the FDA at this time a novelty with no clear precedent to follow.
Pretty sure there was no FDA involved. Probably wasn't an FDA.
It may not have been an FDA back
at that time of the traditional vitamins
Right.
coming to common knowledge.
But he says surely the FDA foresaw the possibility that a new vitamin might yet be identified, and FDA surely intended for such a vitamin to be able to be moved rapidly into the marketplace for the benefit of the American consumer and the American economy.
Yeah, because he points out, it's interesting. The FDA does not say here are what vitamins are, vitamin A, vitamin B, and give you a list of the traditional ones. Instead, it gives a functional working definition
Sure.
for what the compounds, how they fit into that category, not specifically. So it's been left open-ended.
It's open door.
Right.
Right.
Not specifically, the list of the known vitamins. So
If
the
it
FDA was wise in that.
Right. If it satisfies the FDA's definition of the word vitamin, then it is, for the FDA's purpose, for their purposes, a vitamin. This means, for example, that FDA does not need to wait on scholarly consensus to come around to the view that the newly discovered vitamin is indeed a vitamin for FDA to take the appropriate action. He's just explaining how it shows the FDA does give new discoveries of vitamins the benefit of the doubt. And that's right? Yes, you want to protect, but there's that fine line of also wanting to be sure people get what they need. If something new comes along and it's reality and it's real, you don't just dismiss it, even if it does sound crazy. And that's part of learning from history that we talked about last month. We're human, right? And we need to have an open mind. Now, as Chesterton said, don't have so open that your brains fall out, but you still have an open mind to the truth and realizing history and realizing even if things do sound fantastical, you may want to look into this if the science is adding up.
So I should say here, now we are all the way, okay, so that was October 18th. Now it goes all the way to February before there was any more communications. And during that time, the vitamin MEPA was introduced into interstate commerce. It was made available for sale because the FDA had basically said, hands off. We're hands off on this. We're not giving you a green light, but they effectively also did not give a red light. It was basically just like a stalemate type of a situation. Yeah. And so in order to fulfill the moral obligation, I believe things were put in motion for the product to be made available.
Well, I don't think after that communication he sent to Mr. Hines there was any more. I mean, as far as the FDA is concerned. until Dr. Aardsma goes back, and we'll get to that in a second. But, I mean, that was it. When he had sent that with his opinion that methylphosphonic acid was not a vitamin, then Dr. Aardsma gave his response, and then that was it.
Yeah, and the response basically was, look, guys, do a risk versus benefit analysis here. If you don't think what I have is dangerous in these micrograms per day for the diets of American citizens, then you should rightfully not stand in the way, because if I'm right, then that's a heavy account for you to answer. So basically, that was what he came back with, and then there was nothing else. No further communications from the FDA at that point.
So what do you do, right? And we presented this at the beginning of the podcast. If you're in this position and you believe you have something that's literally there to save people's lives, and the hoops you're supposed to jump through, you do, and it doesn't work, what do you do? Well, Dr. Aardsma decided to try to go to the very top and send a communication to the President of the United States himself. If, why not? Give it a shot.
Which at the time in 2018 was President Trump.
Right. And so he does send the president through some sort of an online communication, email or something, to the president. And it's a bit lengthy. We won't go through all of that, but just basically introducing himself, what he has, the hardship in trying to make this known, the delay that now is being caused to make these vitamins available, and is there anything that could be done? Well, as you probably know, if you've ever tried to do anything like that, he gets an autoresponder email back. Nothing comes from it.
Right. He doesn't get anything. Fast forward to March the 6th. He decides to reach out to Mike Huckabee, who was a politician at the time, who had some respect for the Bible. And so Dr. Aardsma thought maybe he would be willing to take a look at this. He sent a short message to Mike because the form on Mike's website, only lets you do a certain number of characters, I guess. So he had to shorten it down. Again, no response from that.
Tuesday, March 22nd, he then tries to contact a Dr. Scott Gottlieb, who was at that time appointed by the administration as the FDA commissioner. So this was the actual FDA commissioner. And let me mention, why is Dr. Aardsma doing all of this? Well, there is a chance someone might respond, but at the same time trying to show, what do we do? We're putting it on record here. We're trying. We're reaching out. We're trying to get the door open to make this available. And so here's communication sent to Commissioner Gottlieb.
I gotta correct myself though. I'm seeing here the vitamin was not being sold. It was being made available for free at this time, and you could give a donation if you wanted.
That's right.
So I was mistaken when I said it was already being sold. It was being made available as the only morally right thing to do, but not at an official sale price.
Right.
Okay.
So Dr. Aardsma goes again into detail with the Commissioner Gottlieb.
This is the FDA commissioner
Right.
at the time in March of 2018. So he's going to the top of the FDA, trying to appeal and say, look, I'm getting no response. I don't know what to do. I need to have a path forward here.
Right. And in this particular communication, he goes into the explanation that, look, we understand this type of discovery can seem nutty to many people. So did Galileo's, others who had breakthrough discoveries, paradigm shifts, trying to penetrate the mainstream. But unfortunately, real human suffering is going on, and we're trying to make this known and to get it out. There's no good reason to wait. And I've tried to contact others. So he sends that on.
So that was March 22nd. Now we fast forward to the end of May.
A couple of months later.
He now reaches out because he's getting no response from any of these individuals. He reaches out to the FDA ombudsman.
Ombudsman.
There's a new vocabulary word, if you have not heard of that before. An ombudsman, according to Wikipedia, is an official who is charged with representing the interests of the public by investigating and addressing complaints of maladministration or a violation of rights. And so he sent an email on May 30th, 2018 to the FDA ombudsman in an effort to get this stalled train moving again.
So then, May 31st, actually the very next day, Dr. Aardsma does receive an email from a Robert J. Durkin, Deputy Director of the Office of Dietary Supplements.
All right, so yay! After greater than 6 months of silence, somebody has said something again to Mr. Aardsma. And he starts by saying, thank you for your March 22nd inquiry regarding your proposed new dietary ingredient, methylphosphonic acid. As explained in our response to your new dietary ingredient notification, methylphosphonic acid does not fit under Section 201 of the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. And he goes on to give the definition that's there. As noted in our prior communications with you on this matter, your notification, as well as information from peer-reviewed literature, fails to demonstrate that methylphosphonic acid is a substance that meets the statutory definition of a dietary ingredient. And then he says some other things, and then he ends by saying, he suggests specifically you should contact Fred Hines.
Right. There's a guy over here named Fred Hines that you need to be contacted.
Right.
And we don't know who this guy is. This guy's never been in contact with anybody over here.
Right.
He's just suddenly
out of the blue.
After Dr. Aardsma contacts the ombudsman, maybe that's who he is.
No, he's not the ombudsman. He's the deputy director. He ends by saying, we hope this information is helpful. And Dr. Aardsma replies about a week later, Dear Mr. Durkin, no, the information in your email was not very helpful. So he's just honest. He's just upfront. This has been very frustrating. Yes. I mean, that's the feeling that you have at this point.
Well, we started in July of 2017, and we're now where?
Almost a year later.
So,
almost
nothing.
No meaningful communication, very, very little of anything of substance to address the question at hand. Is this a vitamin? If so, why? If not, why not? And that's where the FDA has not put forth any meaningful or helpful information.
Right. And so Dr. Aardsma is trying to show that, look, you all, it's frustrating because you are implying I'm the problem. And it's very obvious I have left the ball in your court, and you need to explain why this is not what I'm saying it is. So it's very frustrating. And
you cannot just assert, this Durkin fella said, we explained it does not fit in this category. Dr. Aardsma says, no, actually you asserted it. You just made a blanket statement. It does not fit in this category. But you have given no explanation for why it fails to fit in that category.
And part of what's frustrating is Dr. Aardsma is a professional research scientist that specializes in this very thing. These men are not. And he's trying to explain to them. They're telling him, we explained this to you, Dr. Aardsma.
Right.
And you have no basis for trying to explain anything to me. I'm the one's working for decades on this, and I can tell you, you're wrong. So you're asserting that it's wrong.
And I mean, I'm sure that they get a lot of interesting crazy things there at the FDA. But then again, why would someone who's just kind of a nut go through all the trouble to even file an NDIN? Like, that's not something you're just going to do for entertainment. And also, Dr. Aardsma at this point, I believe, had a patent on the MEPA as a vitamin for treating aging. So the U.S. Patent Office had put it through and had approved it and had granted him the patent. And patents cost a lot of money.
Right.
And so, some nut over here who just had like a daydream and thought he came up with some great idea is very unlikely to go through all of these legal governmental agencies trying to follow the correct path for what he thinks he has and spending multiple thousands of dollars to do so. Now, I'm not saying that that's impossible, but you do wish that the people at the FDA would take you a little bit more seriously just by realizing what you're trying to do here and what you have done.
Well, and isn't it true that this is their job? I mean, even if you think someone is kind of not altogether straight, they've turned in and they're jumping through the hoops they're supposed to be jumping through.
Right.
And it's your job now to answer their questions and to prove them wrong. And if you can easily do that, do it. And you can show that this is dangerous, whatever. But this is your job. Don't just not answer me.
Right. Exactly. You're not fulfilling your duties to the American people at that point. Okay, so again, he comes back and explains to this Durkin fella, here's why I'm frustrated at this point. I'm trying to find out what the FDA thinks is missing and what I need to do. And I would like to pick back up where I left off. I don't really want to start over with you. I don't even really know who you even are. You've just come at me out of the blue. So, you can, like I said, if you want to read all of this, there's a lot of information here. We'll be glad to send you that link. So he goes through all of this and he talks about other vitamin discoveries and the similarities. And that was June the 4th. And again,
right.
Nothing.
At that point, silence again, crickets are chirping. And Friday, June the 8th, Dr. Aardsma tries to reach out to his representative in Washington, D.C., Congressman Adam Kinzinger. There was a form provided on the website. These senators do have, these congressmen. And the subject was new discovery, gave a very quick little paragraph on the situation here and what's going on. Congressman Kinzinger's office did phone and left a message. Communication was opened up there.
A staff assistant, right? So then Dr. Aardsma responded to that staff assistant, showed him what he had tried to send to President Trump, and nothing else came from Kinzinger's office. No response to this, nothing from his staff assistant, nothing from anyone.
Right. And that was June the 12th, 2018. And then there is no more communication until June the 22nd, 2020.
2 years.
2 years.
Nothing from anyone.
Right. At this point, the second vitamin has been discovered, and 2 new NDI notifications are now mailed to the FDA on June the 22nd, 2020 for MEPA and MEPIA, Dr. Aardsma's anti-aging vitamins dietary supplement.
You can look at the NDINs that were filled out and all the details there. It's all publicly available if you desire to see that. So they got back with him in September the 5th, and said, basically same thing. We'll get back with you within 75 days.
It was kind of a repeat of the first.
Yep.
Back and forth on
same
a couple
song,
of
second
things.
verse.
Right.
Yeah. And September 7th, he gets back with her again, basically saying why my package to you by express mail was signed for June the 18th. And why am I not hearing anything from you until September 5th? And you're saying that the date of my NDIN was September 4th. I mean, come on. And he's like, look, I'm not just trying to nitpick over dates. I'm trying to get this to the people that need it.
Right.
And so they basically come back and say, well, it's because of COVID.
Right. That's right. In this one, it was COVID that was the problem. Well, anyhow, government's wheels turn slowly. We all know that, and that's what's going on. Dr. Aardsma sends a communication September the 8th.
There's some new players on the scene here now.
Right.
Gene Scanchi and Gregory Noonan, PhD. These 2 people are now in contact with him since he has reopened the NDINs with the second vitamin on the scene. All right, so we're kind of coming to the conclusion here, and we're coming to the little bit of dramatic things that happened this summer. So here we go.
Well, just to close this out, this Dr. Noonan wanted to contact Dr. Aardsma
By phone.
If you're going by email, we have it right here, right? It's documented. We can go back and read it. If it's by phone, you can't always have
Right.
that
You would really rather not
documentation.
transact official business with the Food and Drug Administration over the phone. But Gregory Noonan did offer to do a phone call, and Dr. Aardsma declined the phone call, and then nothing else was said until November when, same thing, in a kind of a form letter response to the NDIN, and the same thing. Just basically, hands off. We're not going to give you any kind of official
Right.
word on this, and you're on your own, buddy.
Right. So, November the 10th, 2020, it was decided here amongst our team that we're not going to get anywhere with this, with the FDA, obviously. We have done what we can do to fulfill our legal obligation to begin commercial distribution of these vitamins. Having received a reply from the FDA, they did not give us a cease and desist reply, and so we decided at that point, Dr. Aardsma decided the team would just move forward, fulfilling our responsibility to make this known and to put this out.
All right. So now we fast forward. Okay. So that was 2020, and nothing else was said. We received no communications from any government agencies or any legislators or anybody until one morning in July, this past summer, I, in fact, opened my email and I saw a subject line that said online advisory letter reference number 708077. And honestly, I almost deleted it as spam because, we all understand spam emails come through, and that's kind of what that looked like to me. But I glanced at the email and it said regarding Dr. Aardsma's anti-aging vitamins. The email went to me presumably because on some of the sales websites, my email's on there because I'm the salesperson. But the communication was addressed to Dr. Aardsma, owner. This letter is to advise you that the U.S. Food and Drug Administration reviewed your websites at biblicalchronologist.org and draardsmasvitamins.com in July 2025. So my eyeballs are scanning this, and I'm starting to think, what is this? And has found that you take orders there for a product called Dr. Aardsma's Anti-Aging Vitamins. Various claims and statements made on your websites and or in other labeling establish that these products are drugs as defined in 21 because they are intended for the treatment, cure, mitigation, or prevention of disease. For example, your website recommends or suggests the use of Dr. Aardsma's anti-aging vitamins to treat or prevent prostate cancer, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, thrombocytitis, macular degeneration, and hypertension. I will take issue with that. We are not suggesting any such thing. All we're doing is telling the stories of people who have found it beneficial. But I understand there are technicalities involved in these things. However, so I'm scanning this letter. The letter goes on. Basically, it says, take down all of this within 30 days and notify the FDA that you've taken it all down.
And if you don't, we're going to put your business on our website and mark you and label you in violation, basically.
The name of your firm and this letter will be posted on the FDA webpage for products illegally marketed for serious diseases.
Right. So again, 5 years has transpired, and then all of a sudden, here we are. Get this notification from the FDA.
The first thing I did after I sat there and stared at it, and I thought, for Pete's sake, the FDA is on us. Here we are, 5 years later. And they seem to be saying that we're going to be put on a blacklist because we're illegally selling drugs, which we're not. And so the first thing I did was cornered Steve away from any listening children that were around. And I said, we've gotten an email from the FDA. I think it's legitimate. And so he looked at it and he's like, yeah, I think it is. And so we forwarded it on to Dr. Aardsma, who was actually addressed to, and put it in his hands. And that was a little bit surprising, a little bit upsetting, just to be honest. And we didn't know what was going to happen. So the individual that this email was from is named James Mason, and urgent message from the U.S. Food and Drug Administration regarding products marketed by your firm. Now, I do appreciate on this one, Dr. Gerald Aardsma, Dr. Aardsma. So they are addressing him appropriately there. But of course, that's just me being nitpicky. What we really want here is just some meaningful action. So we got this letter, which basically was threatening that if we do not comply with what they're telling us to do here, we're going to be put on a blacklist. So Dr. Aardsma replied 2 days later to James Mason.
Right. And he goes through basically just, this is not a drug. This is a vitamin. Again, we've been around and around about this, comparing it to other vitamin supplements, informing this individual of the same information. There's tons of information out now. It's been 5 years, so things have been published. There's books that have been written that show this is a vitamin supplement. Are you sure, sir, that the FDA would like to go down in history in this way, making it, very clear we don't want to make this available to the public? And
he points out to James Mason, as I would also have done myself, even though I'm not a scientist, but I definitely would like to speak to the FDA, just because the chemical compound in question here treats, cures, or mitigates or prevents disease. Does that automatically put it in the drug category? That's basically the tone of James Mason's email this summer, is that you are saying that it affects all these different diseases. This is a drug. And we all understand that the traditional vitamins do exactly that thing.
Right.
Treat, cure, mitigate, and prevent diseases.
Deficiency
And if
diseases.
you, as our listeners, don't
Right.
know that, go listen to last month's episode. But surely somebody at the FDA should know that vitamins do that very thing. And so do not automatically pigeonhole us over in the drug category just because our supplement, which is truly is a vitamin, according to all the research here, and you have not yet negated that in any meaningful way, do not just put us in the drug category. 2 new vitamins walk into the FDA, being met a little bit with deer in the headlights, and then basically being told, go stand in line with the drugs.
Right. It also just demonstrates the complication of these things. I mean, these things aren't easy to deal with for anybody in a society. And what do you do when 2 new vitamins walk through the door? Well, we do have a potential reason as to why suddenly we got this communication 5 years later out of the blue. Do you want to talk about that real quick?
Not really. Just to be honest, we, as the host here, we really hate to kind of have to go here, but it is the facts of the matter that did transpire. And we ourselves didn't know this until after the fact, even, that in a nutshell, Dr. Aardsma's wife attempted to reach out to Jill Biden via X, a direct message or a private message through X. She did this at the request of her husband, Dr. Aardsma. He asked her to reach out to the Bidens because of feeling compassionate about Joe Biden's mental decline, and wanted to bring to her attention that these newly discovered vitamins may indeed help him. And that was May 19th of this year. And we didn't know this, but Dr. Aardsma was notified May 22nd, 3 days later, that the FDA had accessed the personal data for his website, biblicalchronologist.org. Now, I don't know. I never heard of tiered access. We looked it up. It's basically an organization that allows legal entities to be able to get what is typically not available to the public when it comes to website data and that kind of thing. But the organization, the agency has to put in a request with this tiered access to get this private information. And if the request is granted, then the agency gets the access, and then the owner of the website is also automatically notified. So
this had never happened before.
This had never happened before in the history of the biblical chronologist, and it happens 3 days after this private message is sent to the wife of former President Joe Biden. So
and then it was
there you go.
2 months later, July 24th, that we were notified by the FDA that we had 30 days to change our website's claims, as you already explained.
Right.
Yes. So was it or wasn't it? We don't know for sure, but interesting.
The timing definitely
there.
Does not look good
Right.
as to why all of a sudden the FDA wanted to contact us after so many years of silence. And so here we are. Once again, Dr. Aardsma has tried to reach out to President Trump about it and about the fact that now the FDA is coming after him. As far as I know, we are not yet on any blacklists, and the 30 days went past and we did not take down the claims because we are not selling a drug illegally. So we're not going to follow the rules for drugs because we're not a drug. So at any moment, I suppose we could appear on that blacklist. And really where this is leading is probably fairly obvious that there is going to have to be some kind of litigation that happens with this question. And Dr. Aardsma actually said this to the team here back when we first started selling the vitamins. He said, I think this is probably eventually going to end up in court.
So how else do you? I mean, you're trying to convince the government, the public, that we have a new vitamin. Maybe there'd be a different way, maybe not. It may have to end up in court one day. But wrapping this all up, bringing this to a conclusion, the fact of the matter is many people are suffering today. The research that is here is very real. This isn't make-believe. This is coming from real research with real results, and those in charge need to be giving the appropriate response.
Yes, the suffering that results from not having these vitamins is real, as you mentioned, and it is affecting almost the entire U.S. population in some way or another. The research is ongoing, and more results are coming forward. But what we already have are these two previously unknown vitamins, and without them, you will suffer, and some of that suffering will lead to a premature death. It's going to. That's what vitamin deficiencies do to you. And so people in key positions who are choosing to just ignore emails, ignore communications, need to step up to the plate to give us an appropriate and thoughtful and take the time to respond.
Yes. And Dr. Aardsma, who can tell you this, is absolutely committed to doing everything that can possibly be done to stop this tragic loss. And the research is going to carry on, despite the obstacles, despite what comes. Nobody over here is saying, well, we probably ought to just stop.
Right. I guess they're not going to respond to us. I guess they're going to ignore this. So let's just throw in the towel. No, I mean, there's decades behind everything that's been done here. And that little vitamin bottle represents a lot of sacrifice, a lot of hours of labor. And we're committed as well as the communications team. The outlook is uncertain as far as where this is all going to lead, but we do believe we possess the high ground here. We are trying to do the morally right thing, and we're going to press forward, and we're going to trust God to bring this all about in His time as we do all that we know how to do.
Right, and the government should definitely be protecting people from bad things, but it also should have measures in place, right, to bring good things in.
That's
and
right.
Should not be shocked when there are things that come on the scene that seem crazy, that's not fitting the template. this is the world we live in, and people should be aware of this, especially those in these positions of authority. Protect the citizens from the ravages of whatever it is that comes along. In this case, deficiency diseases that we dealt with. We've been dealing with this for decades and decades, and it shouldn't be a surprise that there might be more of them, and so they need to take it seriously.
Now, our listeners might be wondering what they can do. I hope you are. Thank you for following along. Thank you for your interest in what's happening over here. I'm glad that you are one of the visionaries that's at the front end of this train, and maybe God does have a special role for you to play. Maybe you do have a connection with somebody who could help to move this thing forward, help to put it in front of the right people. And if you don't have a connection like that, you can at least pray with us and ask the Lord to open doors and grant favor with those in the key positions of government, that we could see this accomplish all the potential that lies behind this discovery.
Well, it's time for Helen's View, and Helen pulls out of the past, pulls out of the history box,
The archives,
some writings from Dr. Aardsma from way back. What was this?
Back in the 90s.
Back in the 90s, when he was just beginning to understand some of the important foundations of what led to all of these discoveries. It's very fascinating to go back and see the process in his mind as he's, in one instance, writing to the family. There's an actual letter that he's writing. When we were looking at this, putting it in, it's just so neat to see, what we have here is someone who's just trying to be honest, someone who's just trying to, even though they have their own preconceived ideas, Dr. Aardsma was still wrestling with things and just saying, well, this doesn't make sense, this isn't working. Over here it is making sense, even though it goes against my preconceived ideas, and then going on from there. And so I think you'll find this very interesting.
Intermingled, you have a little bit of just personal Aardsma family history, and because it truly is a behind-the-scenes glimpse with Dr. Aardsma's wife. So let's listen in for this month's Helen's View.
One of my unofficial behind-the-scenes activities is historian of Gerald's research and discoveries. In the very first issue of the Biblical Chronologist newsletter, which was written February 1995, over 30 years ago, Gerald wrote the following. I was attending the International Conference on Creationism, or called the ICC, this past summer, July 18th to July 23rd, 1994, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, when, while studying in my room one evening, I uncovered something which I had not expected. I have thought about it a great deal since, but have had almost no time to investigate it further. I hope to have a good shot at it before the next issue of the Biblical Chronologist goes to press, however. With the discovery of the dropped 1,000 years in 1 Kings 6:1, I feel we can successfully harmonize biblical history with secular data from all fields back to the time of Abraham. Once one has come to accept this, the correct chronology of the historical events recorded in Genesis 1 to 11 becomes the new frontier. In particular, the date of Noah's flood stands as the central question. To date an event in Earth history using physical chronometers, one needs to have some idea of what that event was like and what it did, so he can determine what present day remains to apply his physical dating methods to. I have previously attempted to date Noah's flood, being fully persuaded by the Genesis Flood Book, 1961 by Whitcomb and Morris, that the flood was a super cataclysmic affair which totally destroyed everything on the earth. I was looking for and trying to date a globe-shattering cataclysm. I concluded several years ago that the secular data provided by tree rings, ice cores, and radiocarbon forbade a date for such a flood any more recent than about 10,000 years ago. This conclusion was very disturbing, however. Traditional biblical chronology places the date of Noah's flood at about 5,000 years ago, largely based upon the chronological data found in the Genesis 11 genealogy, Noah to Abraham. It is not at all obvious why there should be 5 to 10,000 years missing in the genealogical, chronological data of Genesis 11. Furthermore, it is not obvious where any significant gaps might exist in this data. I continued to work on these difficulties, however, convinced that there had to be some reasonable answer to them. This was my mindset and principal occupation until that evening at the ICC. I decided I had a responsibility to acquaint myself with the archaeology of the Bible lands prior to the time of Abraham, not because I expected to find anything very helpful or interesting there, but simply out of academic duty, and I felt the ICC would be a good place to do so. Hence I took the book The Archaeology of Ancient Israel, 1992, editor Amnon Ben-Tor, along to the conference. According to my new chronology, Abraham was born approximately 3167 BC. This corresponds roughly to the beginning of the so-called Early Bronze I period in Palestine. The period which precedes Early Bronze I in Palestine is called the Chalcolithic, as I learned from Chapter 3 of the book mentioned above. As it turns out, I was not expecting this. The Chalcolithic and its people look similar to what we might expect the pre-flood world and its people to have looked like. Briefly, they are advanced in the arts and in metallurgy, well beyond the EB people who follow them. They do not appear to show any sign of human government. There immediately appears evidence of cruelty and violence within the human remains of this period. The entire civilization disappears suddenly and without a trace. Quote, the impression is created by a sudden end to the period as a result of a catastrophe of some sort, from page 79 of the book. And those who come after them seem to start over from scratch. Finally, the termination of this culture is dated approximately 3600 BC, which is synchronous, within dating errors, with the new biblical date of the flood of approximately 3520 BC. Calculated assuming no gaps in Genesis 11 and using the Masoretic text. Could the Chalcolithic correspond, in fact, to the latter stages of the pre-flood civilization in Palestine? It is immediately obvious that if it does, then the flood was not the super-cataclysm I have been supposing it to be, because the remains of this civilization are still preserved, though relatively poorly, in Palestine in their place of origin. If it doesn't, we have surely uncovered a curious coincidence. These ideas diverge significantly from my previously accustomed thinking, and no doubt from many of yours. They arise from the physical data, however, not my wishes or imagination. Furthermore, they seem to offer potential solutions to some exceedingly difficult chronological problems which continue to plague the super-cataclysmic flood paradigm despite years of intensive research. Obviously, I need to get to the bottom of this. To do so, I have formulated the working hypothesis. The Chalcolithic in Palestine was catastrophically terminated by the biblical historical event known as Noah's flood. It seems to me that there are two questions which need to be answered as I attempt to determine whether this hypothesis is true or not. Question number 1. What physical archaeological evidence can be found bearing on the question of whether the Chalcolithic was terminated by a flood? Question 2. How widespread was the cultural hiatus which is seen in Palestine at the end of the Chalcolithic? I will be prosecuting these questions over the next several weeks and months in my research as I am able to do so. And that is the end of the quote from Jerry's very first BC newsletter. Now this is me talking. In my memory albums, I have 10 full binders so far. I keep interesting letters, cards, brochures of speaking engagements, correspondence from famous people, my children's artwork, cards, etc. When I was trying to figure out what might interest you, my listeners, to this episode, I started just going back through my albums, a distracting, time-consuming, but very fun endeavor. I came upon a letter that Gerald wrote to me from an airplane on his way to Scotland in August 1994, where he would be attending and speaking at the Radiocarbon conference there. At the time, his discovery that the Chalcolithic in Palestine had been terminated by Noah's flood was only days old. The letter was mailed to me on August 13, 1994, from Twickenham, Northern Ireland, which was one of their stops on the way to Scotland. Thursday, August 11th, 1994. Dear Helen and children, I'm sitting in seat 27A of a 747 jet as I write, and I am next to the window which looks out over the left wing when facing forward. We are over the Atlantic still and nearing the end of the flight. When I look out the window, all I can see is clouds far below and the airplane wing. The jet we were supposed to fly on last night had a, quote, hole in the engine. We had boarded the jet late because they had to replace a pump. We sat and waited a long time in the plane at the gate before learning the mechanics had found other problems while changing the pump, which they hoped to have solved shortly. We waited another long while before we learned that the, quote, engine has a hole in it and that no other flight would be available until morning. We all had to get off the plane at this point and go to a hotel, a lovely Holiday Inn, for the night. They fed us a nice hot buffet supper at 9:30 p.m. and paid for the hotel and other costs, of course. When we taxied away from the gate this morning, everyone cheered. People's true selves come out when they are tired and inconvenienced, and I'm afraid that people's true selves are generally not very pleasant. People who hope to get to heaven on personal merit would probably profit immeasurably by watching a video of themselves in such a situation. I sure do miss you all, and I hope you are all behaving yourselves and pitching in. I expect you are, since I don't know of a better bunch of kids anywhere. I brought some books with me as well as some of my notes on this whole new idea. I read about the chronology of the Aegean, i.e. Greece, Italy, Crete region. There is a chronological division at approximately 3,500 BC, the rough date for the flood. This marks the division between final Neolithic and early Bronze in this region. I was hoping to have a definite answer regarding the possibility of the flood being in this region as well, but the data I have in the book I brought is not sufficient to answer the question. I'll be keeping my ears and eyes open for further hints this week. I found the following paragraphs in the notes I made at the ICC. I didn't date them, but they lie between Monday's notes and Tuesday's notes, so must have been written Monday night. I'd forgotten all about them until I found them an hour or so ago, quoting from the notes. I feel there is something of a profound, which is not to imply necessarily difficult to grasp or complicated by any means, nature which we are all missing. None of the options currently available is satisfactory. I mean here none of the options for harmonizing Genesis with science. The problem is unsolved. The mystery remains. At the same time, there is no reason to suppose the mystery will remain forever, or even for any long period of time. The answer may be discovered tomorrow. Seems to me, nonetheless, that there is no better working model than the recent creation flood model from which to pursue this elusive goal. And I would not be surprised to find that the final answer, whatever it may be, when found, was seen to bear a strong resemblance to that model. I say this not because of some special scientific merit which I perceive in the current recent creation model of Earth history, which elevates it above its foes, but because that model is so deliberately tied to the Bible and in the most biblically honorable fashion imaginable to the present time, and the Bible has a way of being right. That's the end of the quote from his notes from the ICC conference a few weeks earlier. If this was written on Monday night, then it was just 3 nights later that the answer was found, and when compared chronologically, my new paradigm is strikingly similar to the current recent creation model. All I've really done is to add 1,000 years and tone the flood back down to reasonable proportions. Well, they've handed around our hot face cloths to freshen yourself up a bit, which means we will be landing shortly. I'm being treated to many lovely English accents on this flight. The crew is based in England, and many of the passengers are returning Englanders. Keep your eyes on the corn. There might be more than one patch come due close to the same time. I love you all very much and look forward to being home before too many days. Remember to please the Lord where he has put you now. He is looking for faithfulness in the little, mundane things of life. He bases all of his promotions on these. Give Becca, Matthew, David, Laura Lee, Stephen, Mark, Jennifer, and Mommy a special hug and kiss for me, and Timothy, too, if he has snuck out before I get home. Love, Gerald. And he's got a P.S. here. Dave and I are just about to run for the train to Scotland. They've been having train strikes here, but we're expected to make our trip without interruption this morning. We've had a whirlwind visit with the Thorbys, very pleasant folk, and a great cook. Had fried tomatoes, mushrooms, and orange juice for breakfast. The visit to the British Museum was a marvelous experience. I could easily spend a week there. Didn't get too many slides, though. Too dark. Love and miss you all, Daddy. All right, that is the end of the letter. Now I'm going back to my comments. By the way, if you go to the show notes, you can see the actual handwritten letter in Gerald's usual beautiful penmanship, if you want to see the actual letter. To clarify the ending of his letter, he mentions Timothy. I was ready to have my 8th baby during the time that Gerald was to be in Scotland, and we both thought it was a boy, and we had already named him. Thankfully, the baby waited until Daddy got home, and the baby was a girl, our beloved Rachel Eloise, not a boy. It is fascinating that only a day or two after saying the mystery had not yet been solved, but that it was not impossible to solve, and that it could, in principle, be solved at any time, he actually solved it. It was so encouraging to read this letter to Gerald as this was getting ready to go to press. We both have dedicated our lives to God's service, and we marvel at all that God has done in the 31 years of research, harmonizing the Bible and science since this letter was written. To God be the glory. As I read the letter, I was once again reminded and grateful for what a wonderful father Gerald was, and how he often expressed his love to our 10 children in such a sweet and tender way. Thanks for following along on our journey and praying for the work here and for listening to our podcast every month.
Thank you for joining us today on the BC Messenger. Leave us a comment or a review. We always love hearing from our listeners.
It's so easy. Just go to thebcmessenger.com, click on leave a review, and type in your review. That's all it takes. You don't have to have any special account or anything. Just leave us a comment, and we sure would love that.
Have a happy Thanksgiving with your family and loved ones, and we will see you in December.
For the very last podcast of 2025 coming up next month, we will be entering into the Christmas season with our December podcast. We will see you then.